We're here finally, right?
Finally.
I've been trying to get you on for about 2 months now. You were one of the first people I really wanted to interview because I just thought that your life was incredible. So
thank you.
For the people that don't know who you are, introduce yourself, and then just give yourself an introduction is what I'm looking for.
So I'm Alison Levine. First and foremost, I'm a dog lover. That's very important for people to know. I love dogs. But I'm probably more well known for being a mountaineer and an adventurer. I was the team captain for the first American women's Mount Everest expedition. And then I climbed the highest peak on all 7 continents and skied to both the North and the South Pole. So it's what's called the Explorers Grand Slam or the Adventure Grand Slam. Yeah. And I've climbed a bunch of other mountains in between, done some first descents in Antarctica and in Nepal. So I love the adventure world. I love going out there and pushing myself in these mountains and these extreme environments. And that's what kind of, fuels my fire.
That's what you're chasing, right? So how did this start? So let's start with where'd you grow up? Yeah. How did that, what was your childhood like?
So I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. And when I was a kid, I loved the stories. I was obsessed with the stories of the early Arctic and Antarctic explorers and the early mountaineers. And I would read these books and I would watch documentary films because it felt like an escape from the oppressive summer heat in Phoenix. So 118 degrees, 120 degrees, it gets hot. So I'd read the books and I would watch the films, but I never thought I would go to those places because I had some health challenges as a kid. I was born with a hole in my heart.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it got bigger as I got older, but I didn't get properly diagnosed until I was 17 because even though I had these problems as a kid, I grew up in a pretty tough love family. So we had this rule, no whining, no crying, no complaining. And so that was just always the rule. So even though I would experience these terrible health episodes where I felt like I was suffocating and I couldn't breathe. I felt like there was an elephant sitting on my chest. I was afraid to complain about it.
Yeah.
So I would just be like, hey, Mom, I feel like something's wrong. I have a little trouble breathing. Feels like there's an elephant on my chest. And she'd say, oh, you're fine. I'm sure you're fine. It's probably just nerves. You're probably just nervous for your piano recital. And I'd be like, no, Mom, I don't think that's it. And she's like, well, how do you know? I'm like, because I don't even take piano lessons. I took guitar lessons. It was my brother that took the piano lessons. But my parents always joke that, they talk about these helicopter parents. And I joke that we had space shuttle parents.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure they loved us, but they didn't really pay attention to what was going on in our lives. And
how many siblings do you have?
2 siblings, older brother, younger brother.
Okay.
But had parents, loved my parents. My dad's still around, but both my parents suffered from extreme mental health issues. So my mom suffered from extreme depression, and she wouldn't come out of her room when we were little because she always said, I didn't like motherhood. I didn't enjoy it. So she'd stay in her room till we were gone. So we would go off to school, and then she'd come out, and when we'd come home, she'd go back to her room. So she didn't want a lot of interaction. So I would just read books and I would watch films as an escape from that. And I loved these adventures. So I had my first heart surgery when I was 17. I was finally properly diagnosed when I lost consciousness. And some friends that I was with had the good sense to rush me to the emergency room where I was diagnosed with this life-threatening heart condition. So had my first surgery when I was 17. That one was didn't really work very well. But I had my second one when I turned 30. And about 18 months later, this light bulb went on in my head. And I thought, okay, hang on. If I want to know what it's like to be this, badass guy, Reinhold Messner, who's dragging a sled across Antarctica, then I should go drag a sled across Antarctica instead of just reading about it. If I want to know what it's like to be these guys going to these remote mountain ranges, then I should get my ass out to the mountain ranges instead of just watching films about other people. And these other guys can do this stuff. Why can't I do it too? So I climbed my first mountain at age 32. So I'm 57
also, there was
now.
a big, that's kind of late to start doing that,
It is late, yeah.
So what did you do in between, graduating high school and the age of 32?
So I went to college at University of Arizona down in Tucson. And go Cats. And I studied communication and marketing.
Okay.
And then I worked, I needed a car. I didn't have a car when I got out of school. And so I was just looking through, this is back when people used to get jobs by looking at want ads, in newspapers and stuff. I know they don't do that anymore, but we didn't have these monster.com, these job websites. So
the internet wasn't
we didn't
really
have
there,
the internet. So I was just looking for any job that offered a company car. I would do anything that had a car because I needed a car. And so I ended up working in the pharmaceutical industry because you got a company car. I was like, this is cool. And you had an expense account. You could buy pizzas and cookies on the company to give to doctors. But I would consume most of them myself. But so I worked in the pharmaceutical and the medical device industry, and then ended up getting sent over to Southeast Asia for a year to do business development in Southeast Asia. So I did business development for a pharmaceutical company. I covered Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia. Vietnam. Hang on. Let me do that again. I covered Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, and Indonesia. So I did that, and then I knew
Thailand's great.
Yeah. My God.
That's where we did our honeymoon, and I loved it there.
Oh, I loved it too.
Yeah, we thought about moving there, actually.
Really?
Afterwards. After I retired from the NFL, we thought about moving over there because we loved it so much.
Yeah. I loved it over there too. I learned so much too. Also, just being like a Western woman, traveling by myself over there, you really learn a lot about how to get shit done, how to travel, how to do business in these countries, which do business very differently than companies in the US. And so I realized that when I got back from that, I went to work for a medical laser startup in Silicon Valley, but I didn't really know anything about finance or accounting. And I felt like I was short in those areas. And so I went back to business school at Duke, got an MBA, worked in finance briefly, but the whole time when I was doing all that stuff, I felt like the mountains kept calling, and I just felt like I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. But I thought, oh God, I've got a lot of debt. I had a lot of student loan debt that I had to pay off. Yeah. And so I thought I just need to work my ass off and pay off my debt, and then I can go back to doing the things that I love. But then I got a phone call asking me if I wanted to serve as the team captain for the first American women's Everest expedition. And I thought, okay, there's only going to be one first American women's Everest expedition.
Right.
So
that's an opportunity you don't want to miss out on.
Yeah, I'm like, I can't be like, oh, I'm working, sorry. And so but I ended up getting a leave of absence from my job and able to do that. And then I realized, I was never going to be happy sitting behind a desk, even though I'm glad I did it and I learned a lot. But I just felt like I was suppressing who I really was. And I knew I needed to be out in the mountains and back having these adventures and pushing myself outdoors. But I do really think all the stuff I learned on my expeditions helped me in the business world. They help you learn about leadership, teamwork, dealing with unpredictable environments, and just how to keep it together when the shit hits the fan. Mm-hmm. So I felt like the time in the mountains helped me in business. I felt like the stuff I learned in business helped me in the mountains. So it kind of all goes together.
Yeah. So you have an MBA from Duke?
I know. Isn't that crazy?
That is awesome.
But the whole time I was there, I felt like I was a admissions mistake. And I felt like any day they're going to tap me on the shoulder and be like, oh, you weren't supposed to be here. We let you in by mistake. You need to leave. But they didn't. I made it through the program. And it was cool because after I finished the program, I ended up being asked to serve on the board of the Coach K Center on Leadership and Ethics. So I got to learn a lot from Coach K, who, for people listening who don't know who Mike Krzyzewski is, he's the winningest coach in the history of Division I college basketball. And he was also the head men's basketball coach of the U.S. national basketball team, our men's Olympic team. Yeah. They brought home several gold medals. And I just think that guy knows so much about leadership and how to pull a team together and make them work together well. And a lot of the advice he gave to me over the years was very contrarian compared to normal business advice. But I feel so fortunate to have had time with him. And he actually wrote the foreword for my book too. So
oh, nice.
So nice. I'm a big Coach K fan. I'm a big basketball fan. I haven't gone to U of A, and I'm talking to football guy, but when you go to U of A and then to Duke.
Yeah, basketball's in your blood.
Yeah.
That's so cool that you did that. So at what age did you climb your first mountain?
32.
So you waited all the way to 32. So how did you become part of that team?
So All right, so I climbed my first mountain when I was 32. It was just Mount Kilimanjaro, which probably a ton of your listeners have climbed. It's not a technical mountain. It's over 19,000 feet, though, so you do feel the altitude.
Oh, yeah.
You do really get a feel for what it's like to be at elevation with the banging headache and the loss of appetite and the sleepless nights. So you get a feel for it. But that mountain, even though it's not technically difficult, anyone can go, anyone with some a strong sense of willpower can climb that mountain if you can put one foot in front of the other. But that was the mountain where I learned that I could push myself past this point of discomfort, where I learned that I thought I was going to have to quit and go down because I was so uncomfortable, but learning you can take one more step when you feel uncomfortable. And then if you can take one more step, then you can take one more.
And that's where growth happens.
Yeah, thinking like, oh, I'm definitely going to go down, but before I go down, I'm just going to take a couple more steps. All right, I know I've got to quit. I know I'm going to have to cut this short. I'm not going to make it to the summit because I feel so shitty. But I'm just going to take a couple more steps. And I take a couple more, and then a couple more. And then I find myself at the top of the mountain. So that gave me the base to know that when I felt really freaking uncomfortable, that I could keep going. So I climbed that mountain first, and then I went on to climb. Every time I had a break from graduate school at Duke, I went to another mountain. I missed tons of stuff. I missed all the recruiting events when all my classmates were going to Silicon Valley to interview and going to Week on Wall Street. But what I would do is I would go to the mountains and I would write postcards to recruiters from the mountains. And I would hand it to somebody climbing down the mountain. I'd be like, hey, can you pop this in the mail for me? And it was to the recruiter from JP Morgan or Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs. And I'd say, hey, I know all my classmates are with you guys at Week on Wall Street. I'm at, 20,000 feet camped out on Mount Aconcagua right now, so I can't be there, but I look forward to meeting you when you come recruit on campus. And I ended up getting interviews with all these different firms.
That's genius.
So I figured out a way that I could keep doing what I love, but kind of keep my feet in, keep my feet in the pool.
Yeah, stay relevant with them.
Yeah, I needed, because I needed the job. I needed to pay off my loans. I wanted the job. I wanted the work experience. So I kept going to the mountains during every break from grad school. We had breaks, at Duke, we had breaks every 6 weeks. So I could go to a different mountain. So I just built up my skills. And at the time, this is back in 1999, 2000, there weren't that many women in the sport.
Right.
So we all kind of knew each other or knew of each other. So by 2001, I had climbed the highest peak on 6 continents, and Everest was the only one I hadn't done. And that's when I got this phone call from these other women saying, hey, we're putting this team together. Would you be interested in serving as the team captain? And I thought, okay, wait a minute. Now I'm not, I'm working. I got to pay off my loans. I have $70,000 of debt. I can't quit my job. I'm like, but first American women's Everest expedition. I thought if I don't do this, someone else is going to do this, and they're going to be living my dream adventure. So I just asked for leave of absence from work. I got an unpaid leave of absence and agreed to serve. And at the time, I still had all this doubt in my head. I don't know if I'm going to be good enough. I don't know if I'm going to be fast enough. I don't know if I'm going to be strong enough. I mean, because most of the people I saw in the mountains were big, tall, strong dudes that were 6'2", 6'4", 6'6", long legs, big lungs. I'm 5'4", 110 pounds. And so I just thought and these guys always blow by me on the trails, always, because they're so fast. And I just thought, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to keep up with those guys. But then you realize you don't have to be the fastest, and you don't have to be the strongest. You just have to be the person that will not frickin' quit, no matter what. No matter how hard it gets, no matter how shitty you feel, no matter how uncomfortable it is, you don't quit. You just be the person that puts one foot in front of the other. And those are the people that get to the top of the big mountains. They're not necessarily the most skilled. I mean, sometimes they are, but a lot of the people that get up there are just the people that are not going to quit.
They refuse to quit.
Yeah.
That advice for anybody that's listening is the best advice you can get, because it doesn't matter what it is that you're chasing. Especially this day and age, because everybody's so soft now. God, if you have any kind of savage in you, I think Dana White said it. If you have any kind of savage in you, you can just run these dudes right over.
That's what it takes.
Right over, because you go right through them.
And the thing is, that's why I go back to Kilimanjaro, because even though it's not a difficult mountain, that's where I learned that even when I feel like absolute hell, I can take one more step.
Yeah.
And then you can take one more step. And then, you figure out you can keep going when you feel super shitty.
Yeah, and
you can.
And I think, do you think a lot of that is because you're not looking at the big picture, right? You're not looking at the finished goal. You're just looking at, okay, I just got to get through this next couple steps.
Yeah, so that's
And then when you get through that, you're like, okay, now I can get through this couple steps. And if you just keep compounding those, next thing you know, you're at the top. And that is like such a good metaphor for literally anything you're trying to do in life.
Yes.
If you just focus on the next step instead of looking at like, oh, because everyone's at instant gratification, right? So they're going to try to bomb the hill as quick as they can. No, that's not what it's about. It's about taking your time and doing it the right way and focusing on the little things first.
That's exactly the way you look at Summit Day on Everest, because you're camped out you're at 26,000 feet. That's known as the death zone. So anything 26,000 feet and above is the death zone. That's the elevation where human life can no longer be sustained and your body's starting to die at that elevation. So you don't want to spend any more time than you have to in the death zone.
How much time do you spend there?
So I've spent two nights there, actually. Ideally, you want to probably keep it to one, just because it's really hard on your body. Your muscles are deteriorating. You're not thinking super clearly at that elevation because your brain is starved for oxygen. But if you think you're at 26,000 feet, the summit's at 29,035 feet. So that's more than 3,000 vertical feet alone you have to cover, not to mention all the horizontal distance. And so if you think about that, it's easy to feel overwhelmed because also when you're at that elevation, you're moving very slowly. You're taking multiple breaths for every step. You have to take multiple breaths to take one step.
Yeah.
So I get out of my tent, I'm thinking, holy shit, like I can't do this. Like thinking about the summit, oh my God, 3,000 vertical feet, all the horizontal, there's no way. So I did exactly what you just explained. I stopped stressing out about the summit. I focused on a big boulder that was down the trail. And I thought, okay, I just need to make it to that boulder. That's my goal for right now, just going to that boulder, not worrying about the summit, going to that boulder. Then I got to the boulder. I thought, okay, well, hang on, because I made it to this one. So maybe I can make it to that one that's further away. And I make it to the further one. Okay, now that I'm here, maybe I can make it to one more. So every time I would think, oh man, I don't know if I'm going to be fast enough. I don't know if I'm going to be strong enough. I think, well, hang on, because I made it here so I can make it to one more. All right, now I can make it to one more. And it's, you have to have that voice in your head that tells you should quit is a voice that you just have to train to talk to you differently, because that's the same voice that tells you can keep going.
Yeah.
You can keep going. And once you've done it once, you have that voice in you and you can sum it up, because you're like, I felt like this before and I kept going then. I can do it now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, that reminds me of like a really hard training camp practice where it's like, 3.5 hour practice, full pads, and you're just like, it's 90 degrees out, 80% humidity. And your feet are soaking wet and you're just like stepping in water, it feels like. And every time you put your hand on the ground, you start getting a little lightheaded. But you got to know that everybody across from you is feeling that way too. So if you can just just get through that day and then recover, it's the little things, right? It's snap by snap, right? So if I can let me do one more snap. All right. Okay. I got through that. Let me control my breathing, get back to the line, boom, go one more snap. And then you just keep compounding that,
right?
An event, sometimes, we would go into like full body cramps and just fall out, but most people aren't willing to push themselves there, because long before that voice started telling them that they need to quit. And instead of ignoring it and telling it, because to me, I'm like, fuck you, I'm not going to quit,
Yeah.
I'm not quitting.
Well, even your injuries, right? So there's like the day-to-day hard stuff, but then looking at your injuries and coming back from that,
and
right?
those are all mental. Like recovering from an injury, the science is all the science and stuff that they have to bring you back from an injury in the rehab, it's there. It's the mental part that's the hardest, right? So it's like, okay, I got 6 weeks of recovery. I got to recover for 6 weeks. So for 6 weeks, you have to like take it easy and
Yeah.
do just like focus on the little things to like really heal yourself and strengthen those areas that are injured, right? Like, so, you tear something in your ankle or your elbow or,
Yeah.
the elbow was just miserable, but I did the little things right and I bounced back and I was able to play the next season,
And
play
it's
at a high
probably a
level.
hard balance though, because if you try, like you're saying, if you try to come back too quickly,
You hurt it
you
worse.
can re-injure and then you're going to be out longer. So you have to balance the physical, actual rehab process with your mental desire to come back and come back strong.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it's a really delicate.
It
balance
is. It is. And it's up to, it's a good training staff and good coaches, like good strength coaches and stuff. They'll teach you how to like back off, like a guy like Lauren Landau, who was the Broncos strength coach, but he was my trainer before that. And we just trained like in the off season together, but he would always tell me like, you don't have to go as hard as you can every single time. Sometimes you have to be a little bit smart about it. He's like, it's not about just being the toughest or the strongest all the time. It's about being the smartest and most well equipped, as far as it comes to being a great athlete.
Yeah.
And he was right. I mean, I like embodied that and I took that approach and everything. Cause I used to just be like, all right, I'll just out physical everybody.
Right.
Right. And then when you get a little older and the wear and tear starts hitting your body, you have to think a little smarter and you have to start thinking strategically and use all that power and strength strategically instead of just like every single play for 60 plays snap for 60 plays straight in a game. You have to back off a little bit and think, okay, I can like just get it done here. And then like, if the play's going that way, I just like I figured a way to work that way at the most efficient way. But if it's coming to me, then I can like explode, So like anticipation and knowing what's coming and studying film. I used to not study film because I just would go out there and play.
Really?
Because I thought it
would
would make
not
me
watch
think
film?
too much. It would make me think because I'd be out there thinking like, oh, what is this backfield said? This and that, But once I matured as a football player and became a real student of the game, that's where I learned that I can figure, like these teams are all predictable. And I started just knowing exactly, probably 45% of what of the plays I was on the field, I knew what was coming. Or at least I had an idea. So I wasn't just putting my hand and that saves so much energy because you're not guessing. So like your nervous system is like already set up and you know what's going to happen. And that makes a huge difference in a game where you're reacting. So I think there's a lot of similarities there, but to me, when you're pushing your body up to, you called it the death zone.
Yeah.
You're pushing your body is literally dying.
Yeah.
So to me, your mind is probably long before that, probably at what? I bet getting up to your first base camp, your mind is starting to say, I don't think this is smart.
It's funny because base camp on the south side of Mount Everest is over 17,000 feet. So you're already just hanging out at base camp, right? Your body already is experiencing the stressors of altitude. And any elevation over 18,000 feet is really where your body starts to deteriorate pretty rapidly. So it's interesting, the process of climbing Everest, you don't just climb from base camp to camp 1 to camp 2 to camp 3 to camp 4. You don't just climb up the mountain. You're on that mountain for 2 months because you have to let your body get used to the altitude.
The
You
acclimation.
have to go through that acclimatization process. So you spend some time at base camp, you climb to camp 1, then you climb back down to base camp because you have to get below 18,000 feet so your body can regain some strength. And then you do it again, climb to camp 1, climb to camp 2, 21,500 feet at camp 2. Then you come back down to base camp again, spend some more time there. Climb to camp 1, climb to camp 2, climb to camp 3. You're almost 24,000 feet at camp 3. Then all the way back down to base camp again.
And base camp's at 17.
17.5, yeah.
So you're going from 17 to 24.
And back
And that's the third
down.
time that you've gone to a different camp and then back down.
And so psychologically, obviously it's very physically challenging to climb up and down and up higher and back down and up even higher and back down. But psychologically, it can crush you as well because you need to be going upward to get to the summit, but you're spending a hell of a lot of time climbing down, in what feels like the wrong direction. You're coming back down to base camp and you feel like you're wiping out all the progress that you made. So what you have to do is you have to understand that even though you're going backwards down the mountain, you're still making progress because you're helping your body acclimatize. And so you really have to reframe the way you define progress, because sometimes progress doesn't look like progress. Sometimes progress doesn't feel like progress, but it's still progress. Even though you're moving in a different direction from where you thought you would be going, right? You think you're going to be going up the mountain. Now you're moving down the mountain. Even though you're going backwards, it's still progress. And so I have a saying that I like to share with people, which is that backing up is not the same as backing down, right? Just because you're changing direction doesn't mean you're backing down. It doesn't mean you're losing the gains that you've already made.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a great life metaphor, because a lot of people get discouraged when they have a setback, right? And the setback could be like, oh, it didn't work out the way I wanted it to, so I'm going to quit.
Well, and
how many people do you see in life that just, it didn't work the first time they tried, so they're like, oh, see, I told you it wouldn't work.
Right. Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, you've already put yourself in a losing situation. You know, I always talk about failure, right? So failure to me is it's super cliche to say I didn't learn, I didn't fail, I just learned something, right? But it's super cliche, but it's the truth. Because when it came to football, it was, I played 10 years and I played 40 to 60 snaps a game. A lot of pass plays happened in each game, right? 16 to 17 games a season. I had 36 regular season sacks. So how many times do you think I failed before I finally got to the quarterback? There was games where I'd never got to him. Wow. But I knew that the next time I played a game that I would learn, right? So like play after play, it's like, oh, that didn't work. And then you try something else, that didn't work. Try something else, that doesn't work. And then eventually you learn from those three things, and it's like, okay, I'm going to act like I'm doing that and then do something else. And it would work, and I'd get by the guy, and I'd get a sack. I do the same thing with bow hunting. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've put stalks on, and it just like, I thought for sure everything was going to go right. Like the wind was perfect. I had the good cover. The ground was soft, so I wasn't going to make a lot of noise. And then you're going in there, and then some unknown variable would happen, like the wind would switch, and he'd smell me, or another animal was there that I didn't see would pop up and kind of blow my cover. And that happens time and time again. Right. You just learn from it. And it's like, okay, next time, maybe instead of trying to come from underneath him, I'm going to it took me a while to learn that like, hey, I need to make sure I'm coming down onto these animals. So I have the advantage and they can't see every little movement that I'm making down there. Cause that's like somebody coming into my house and trying to hunt me with the lights off, and I got night vision. Like, I'm going to find them long before they even know where they're going, you know? So to me, it's like, you're already at a disadvantage, and being a big guy makes it more difficult to sneak on things. So it's like every time that I fail out there, sometimes you don't really, all it is just the wind, and mostly the wind is usually getting you. So that's like an unknown variable, and that can break you mentally, because not only because you've hiked, 2,000 vertical feet, you're at like 11,000 feet, somewhere between 8 and 11,000 feet is where I usually hunt. So you're getting up there to get after them, and you get all the way across these two ridges over. You hear a bugle, so you go, and then you get there, and you can't get in on them. You can't get them to come to you. There's no way to get in on them. So you're like, okay, well, I'm going to try this. So it's either like, do we wait till the next day, or do we go push it now and blow him out of there and educate him? So sometimes, like you said, taking a step back. So we'll just back out. Yeah. I used to be like, let's go and go push and go after him. And then I'd educate him and we wouldn't see him again. Right. And then I learned like, okay, maybe I need to just back out and come back again tomorrow whenever like the wind is better, or maybe he's in a better situation or he's in a better area for me to put a stalk on him. And that's kind of how I take the approach in life in general. Right. It's like sometimes just pushing as hard as you possibly can and forcing things isn't the right answer. Right. Sometimes you got to take a step back, reassess, and then learn something. Because like I'm sure that like just getting to those milestones on that mountain, right? So getting to that all three of those from 17,000, that first landmark, right? Yeah. You got there, and then it's like it could crush your soul if you're not mentally tough. If you're not tough enough mentally to like handle that situation, to say, I have to go back down. right? So you go back down, then you go back up, and then you sleep there, right? And you're like, okay, so I've had to do this twice just to like make any kind of progress, right? That's life, right?
And the
That's life.
frustrating part too is as you make progress on the mountain, as you go higher on the mountain, the worse you feel, right?
Yeah.
Because the more elevation gain there is. And so it doesn't get easier. It just gets harder every day as you make progress. You know, you fall into your tent at Camp 3 and you're like, oh my God, I feel like I gave everything I had in me to get to this camp. And then you know tomorrow's going to be even harder. And the next day is going to be even harder. So that's the mental part of it, is knowing when you feel like you're completely spent, you have nothing left in you, and you know you have to find more for the next day. But I want to
What kind of food? Hold on. What kind of food are you eating up there? Are you eating like dried meals and stuff like that? Like
freeze-dried meals, which I don't mind freeze-dried meals. Actually, I kind of like them. But when you're at base camp and then what they call advanced base camp, which is at Camp 2, you have cooks there typically that are cooking, and it's mostly rice and lentils. I actually prefer the freeze-dried to rice and lentils. And we had Spam. We had a lot of Spam.
Yeah.
You know, the canned, the kind in the can, not the email kind, obviously, but the kind in the can. But yeah, it's hard. I mean, and then, you know, for the American Women's Everest Expedition in 2002, because we were the first American Women's Everest Expedition, we're sponsored by Ford. Saw your Bronco out front. Love that. We were sponsored by Ford. We had a ton of media coverage. Right. And so we were all over national media. We're actually all over international media, did the whole morning show circuit, evening news anchors were interviewing us. And then we didn't make it. I did not make it on that climb. I didn't make it until 8 years later. But we had to turn around about 270 feet from the top when a freak storm blew in at 6:30 in the morning. So you typically expect storms in the afternoon. It's not unusual to get storms in the late afternoon. But in the morning, this freak storm came in at 6:30 in the morning. The weather reports that we had been subscribing to said it was going to be a good day. We got a storm that came in. So we had to abandon the summit attempt 270 feet from the top after, you know, you're on that mountain for 2 months. And so you feel like you're that close, but 270 feet would take us several hours, right, at that elevation. And we didn't.
What elevation are you at there?
We were at about 28,750 feet above sea level. 28,750. So
that's where the planes are. That's where the big jets are flying.
Yeah, and you can see it. You're like, oh, it's just spitting distance. I mean, if you could spit 200.
Well, compared to how far you have just climbed up, right?
Right.
It's not like in comparison. It's not
so
far.
To have to turn back, and especially wanting to, I mean, you're the same kind of person. You want to come through for your team, right? You want to get it done. You want to be the clutch player. You want to make your team proud, your sponsors proud. You know, we wanted Ford to be proud of us. You know, and we're, you know, meanwhile, National Geographic has this is like the big insert, like centerfold cover for national, you know, centerfold section for National Geographic. We had so much media and we didn't make it. And then you have to come back from the trip and do all the media interviews again and talk about the fact that you did not freaking make it. And it just felt like such a punch to the gut to have such a high profile failure where everyone's focused on the fact that you didn't get the win. You didn't get there. You did not achieve this goal. I was the butt of Jay Leno's opening monologue joke. That did not feel good. And I just internalized all of this, feeling like I didn't do it. I didn't come through. And everyone was focused on this failure, but nobody seemed to focus on the fact that we were the first team of American women to even try something like this. This was an altitude record for every single person on my team, but everybody was focused on the fact that we did not get there. And I really internalized that failure for so long. And I was thinking, you know, what if I try and fail again? Will I ever get another sponsor? Will any corporation ever want to sponsor an expedition? Will I ever be invited to lead another trip? What will this do to my reputation? I was so afraid of this failure. But I want to quote the great philosopher Pitbull, who says, I do not know the word lose. I only know the word learn. It's what you were talking about a few minutes ago about how you have to take these things in stride and learn from them and know that you can come back better the next time around. And so it took me 8 years to get up the guts to go back again. And I did go back in 2010 and made it to the summit. And that was the completion of what's known as the Explorers Grand Slam or the Adventure Grand Slam, which is climbing the 7 summits and skiing to both the North and the South Pole. So I completed that in 2010, but it felt kind of anticlimactic, believe it or not, to get to the summit, because if you put it in perspective, Mount Everest is just a pile of rock and ice. It's really all it is. That's what this big mountain is. It's a pile of rock and ice. And I was proud, to make it to the summit, and especially because at the time, there were only a couple people in the world that had completed the Grand Slam. So my photos on the front page of the New York Times sports section. And so people would ask me, wow, what was that like? And you did it. And I said, it didn't feel like a big deal because, again, Mount Everest is a pile of rock and ice. And I didn't feel like it was this life-changing moment. And I realized it's so much of the stuff that happens off the mountain where you take those lessons from the hard shit and you bring those lessons back with you and you share them with other people and you apply them to other areas of your life. And I felt like that was what was impactful about that summit, right? It wasn't the actual moment of standing there because you're up there and there's, you're not with your friends, you're not with your family, there's a couple other people around, maybe you know them, maybe you don't. But for me, it's about sharing these experiences with other people that gives me the fulfillment that makes me feel like it was worth it. But in the moment, standing up there by myself just it didn't feel like I thought it would feel. And I've heard other people say, standing on top of Everest was the best moment of my life. And it didn't, I don't know. For me, I'm like hanging out with my husband and my dog. That feels like a great moment to me. It's the little things. I think the hardship of it makes me appreciate the little things. And it's, to me, those little moments that feel so impactful to me.
Yeah, I can really relate to that. It was a surreal moment for me to win a Super Bowl, but at the same time, people are like, "Oh, what was that like?" And I'm like, dude, I dreamed about, that was what kicked off my passion for football, right? Was to win a Super Bowl.
Like every kid who's playing high school football or even Pop Warner, whatever they have in the grade school, that's their dream, right? Yeah. But at least, you did it with a team. And it was like you all worked up to that through the whole season. You did it with the team. So I think that might have been a different, for me, just feeling like I didn't do this with a team, it just felt kind of.
Well, because I think you're still internalizing the failure from the first time, which you can't put that on yourself because it's an unknown factor.
Yeah.
Like the wind, the weather is something you can't control.
Yeah. And you have to realize when you're in these unpredictable environments, which is the world today, really, everything is so volatile and unpredictable and uncertain. You're always going to have things out of your control that are going to affect your dreams, your goals, your day-to-day life, right? And you just have to be okay with that and understand that unpredictability is going to be a part of life. And the more you can embrace that and appreciate it. So now I kind of think it's fun when there's a lot of unpredictability. I don't want to risk my life. I don't think that part's fun, but I enjoy
adversity. Is it adversity that you enjoy?
I like these environments. I like going up high in the mountains, and I like going to, ski 600 miles across Antarctica. So I know it's going to be freaking hard, and I know there's going to be a lot of things that pop up that we did not predict. And I like dealing with those things and also just increasing your agility every time you deal with something unpredictable and realize that you can make all the plans you want and your plans are outdated as soon as they're finished because the mountain doesn't care about your plans. You've got avalanche danger. You've got weather. You've got crevasse danger. You could fall hundreds of feet to your death.
Yeah.
There's all these things that you have to be agile. You have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to shift. When the route looks shitty in one direction, you have to be able to reroute yourself in another direction. And I like that. I think it's fun to deal with the unknown.
To find a different way.
Yeah.
Like this way's not going to work. Let's find a different way. You know, just to go back to like the Super Bowl thing, you know, the ring is sitting right there, but and it was such a huge accomplishment, but like when you're saying I did it as a team, it was short lived. Really? Because that next season comes up so quick.
What have you done for me lately?
Exactly. And it's like nobody cares. All over again. Nobody cares, you know, Super Bowl 50, but guess what? Next year Super Bowl 51.
Right.
So that's what you're chasing. So it's like this constantly moving goal. Right. That you have to just continue to, you can't just get somewhere and then be like, I made it.
Right.
I did it. You know, no, you have to continue. It's like complacency, right?
Right.
I didn't want to feel complacent. So I was like, okay, I'm not even going to let myself really enjoy it. Like I didn't even get
but to this is huge though. You should have enjoyed it.
I didn't live in the moment because I was focused on what was ahead of that.
Well, I didn't live in the moment either because I was focused on getting down, right? Because the majority of deaths that occur on Mount Everest occur after people have reached the summit, when they're on their way down, because they use everything they've got in them to get themselves to the top, and they don't have enough left in the tank to get themselves down. So that's what I was thinking about. But it's so interesting to hear you say that you didn't really have that moment of celebration because you're like, okay, we did it, we're done. Super Bowl 51, let's look at that. We got to get ready for that. And just in that mindset. So I appreciate that mindset, but I mean, this is really a huge Super Bowl. Winning Super Bowl 50 is a huge accomplishment.
It wasn't until I retired. Honestly, it wasn't until I retired that when I was done chasing it, that I realized how special it really was. Yeah. And I really cherished that experience because it was so fun. You know, it was like a drug to do that.
Yes. You know? And that feeling of we did it. This team, we worked hard all season and then we finished it. Yeah. We did it.
Yeah, because only one team comes out successful.
Right. Like, and I think the camaraderie there.
Oh, yeah. Your brothers for life. Yeah.
Just unbelievable.
Yeah, because it is. I mean, it's we had a lot of doubt, you know, from the outside world on that team. Yeah. But we knew that we were going to win. We just knew it. Like once we got probably, I think it would say like 3/4 of the way through the season, we knew that we were the best team in the league. We just knew it. You know, so we just knew that it was all on us, and the only thing that could beat us was us. So if we didn't beat ourselves, we'd be fine. You know, but like I said, I didn't feel like I did anything yet. You know, I was like, I still feel like we haven't.
If I knew you then, I would have hit you.
I know. A lot of people were like, why are you talking about next season already? I'm like, because
we have to focus on that.
Because I want to win another one, you know?
It's kind of like why there's a lot of Olympic athletes, Olympic medalists that have a hard time with mental health after the Olympics because they've worked their whole life to achieve something and they achieve it. And then it's like everyone's moved on. Well, who are the athletes the next year? And who are we focused on for winning the gold, winning the medals next year? And they feel like their purpose in life is kind of done. And it's hard for a lot of them mentally to just kind of deal with life after that because
purpose
they don't
is so
know.
Purpose is so important. You can just make up some kind of purpose. Like, what is your purpose? You know, why am I here working out, right? Why am I waking up every morning and going to work? What is your why? Right. You know, so creating a why is important. And I always did that, you know, when I was young, I wanted to get out of the situation I was in. I was like, if I get to the NFL, I won't have to worry about things ever again. But then once I got there, I was like, okay, now my why is because I don't think I belong. So now I'm like, I have to prove everybody and myself that I do belong. And then whenever I reach the highest levels and win a Super Bowl, I was like, now I got to show that I can maintain it and stay here on top. And then when it was done, I was lucky enough to have something that I was passionate about, which was bow hunting, right, and podcasting, and you know, public speaking, doing those things. I might not
know you if it weren't for hunting, because remember I got in touch after you killed that mountain lion.
After the mountain lion. Yeah. So that's the thing. It was like I already had. A lot of guys don't have that, and it happens in the military as well. You know, a lot of guys don't have a purpose when they get done, and they don't have a direction. So you know, I'm super blessed and grateful for that because without bow hunt, like I never cried after I won a Super Bowl. I never cried when I got drafted, like happy tears, you know, like I didn't like none of that stuff. I was expecting myself to do those things. So it was never like an emotion. It never got emotional for me. Yeah. But when I put an arrow through my first elk and put my hands on him, I cried.
You
because I
did.
was so happy because I dreamed about doing that since I was a kid. Like I watching people elk hunt as a kid growing up in Ohio, never even imagined I would have that opportunity because it seems so far, like the Rocky Mountains coming from Appalachia seems so far away and
Right.
so out of touch,
Not your world.
yeah.
At
So
the
it was just
time.
not my world. So like when I finally was able to do it, it was like this crazy emotions that kind of rushed in. And sometimes I get that with now that when I think about the Super Bowl, like winning that, but it's more of like I feel like we had more in the tank. Like we should have been able to come back and repeat. I felt like we should have repeated that next year. And that's what sticks with me. It's not like the winning. I think about the failure of the next season instead of, the upside of that. Because I can remember that next season even better than I can that one because I think about my failures more than I do my accomplishments. And that's just, it's like a blessing and a curse because it pushes and drives you, but it also makes it so you don't get to live in that moment and really appreciate that.
I remember coming back from Everest and after having completed the Grand Slam, and then people were like, "Oh, you just summited Everest. Like, what are you going to do to top that?" I'm all pissed off. I don't have to do anything to top that. Like, I just climbed Mount Everest. Like, I never have to do anything ever again for the rest of my life. I'm going to sit on the sofa and eat bonbons.
Yeah.
But
I'm going to relax for a couple
that's,
months.
So people, what are you going to do? How are you going to top that? And I thought, I don't have to top that. I just have to keep doing stuff where I push my limits, where I challenge myself, where I'm learning and maybe helping other people along the way. That's the way I top that. I don't feel like I have to do something. They're like, you should do K2, in winter without oxygen. And I'm like, you should.
Why?
Why do I need to risk my life to prove that I can do more?
Yeah.
And
to other people.
Yeah.
Because other people expect you to go, let's
do
see what she
something
did. What's she
bigger.
going to do next,
And part of me feels like I'm disappointing people when they're like, "Oh, what's your next goal?" And I'm like, I want to have a dog rescue for older labs and golden retrievers. And they're like, "No, come on, like what's your real goal?" I'm like, "Why isn't that a real goal? Like I love dogs. I love older labs and golden retrievers. Like why can't that be my goal? Why does it have to be a goal where I risk my life?" And I know that, I used to be a big embracer of that mindset, the go big or go home mindset, right? Go big or go home. I was that person. But I've really, over the past few years, changed my philosophy there because I saw too many people I know go big and not come home.
Not come home, yep.
So now I'm a go big and go home person. Go big. Push yourself. Pursue the dreams. Do hard shit. Do stuff that scares you, but at the end of the day, the thing that is most important is coming back to the people that you love and the people that love you. So now I'm a go big and go home, right? Go after your dreams, give all you've got, but at the end of the day, it's people that care about you and that you care about. That's the most important thing, and you got to save something for them.
Yeah, that's ultimately what pushed me into retirement. Was because the head injuries and the physical injuries, and I was having a hard time. Right. My hips, both of my hips, and my low back, and my neck. So like that whole situation, that whole thing was banged up pretty good. So I was like bending over to pick my daughter up, and I'm like, ugh, barely able to do it. And then I'm like, she's like wanting to play with me after practice, and I can't even move. And I was like, what kind of quality of life is this? At what cost am I, at what cost and what am I sacrificing for money ultimately? And I was like, I made enough money. I don't need to keep doing this. Who am I trying to prove anything to? I made it to 10 years and I decided, I was like, you know what?
What's the average? 3?
2.5.
2.5, 3?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
2.2 years or something is
That's
like the
what
average.
I knew
so
it was less than
I
3.
played way more than that.
It's a long time.
So for 10 years, I did it at a high level and I did it at the best of my ability, and I don't have any regret because, when you talk about you had the opportunity to be the captain of that team. Had you not taken that and worried about, paying off that student loan, the price you pay for regret is much higher than you could ever imagine.
Right.
So feeling regret is like, that's my biggest fear. Honestly, is feeling regret. Like,
same.
Being like, man, I can't change this. I regret that I didn't do this or doing that. Like, it's like, I want to be able to chase every dream that I possibly can think of and chase it full bore.
Yes.
But I also want to be able to, I also want to be a good husband and a good father. So there's a balance there. especially because I come from a background of just worrying about myself. I only had to worry about myself. So now that there's other people that are accounting, like they're counting on me.
Were you an only child?
No, I had a half brother and a half sister.
Okay.
But they were taken care of by my mom and stepdad. I wasn't.
Yeah.
I didn't have that. So I had to take care of myself and find ways to do things myself. So I only had to worry about myself. And that created like a sort of a selfish mentality where you're just like focused on yourself all the time. So I have to battle that a lot.
But also gives you strength.
Yeah.
Inner strength, because no one's going to take care of you and you have to take care of yourself.
Right.
Because I think I got a little bit of that too from just my family. Having a mom, like she always said, if I could do it all over again, I would never have kids. I'm like, I don't think you're supposed to say that to me, Mom. But, she's like, I didn't enjoy motherhood. And she just suffered from such severe depression that she just stayed in a dark bedroom and didn't want to be around kids. So we learned to like get ourselves up, get ourselves breakfast. I had ice cream for breakfast almost every day growing up because there's no one to tell me I couldn't. So I'm like, I'm just going to have ice cream for breakfast. So I have ice cream and I get myself off to school, walk to school. So I think there's a lot. I feel like if I had it, wonder what it would have been like to have a close family. Because I have two brothers, but none of us are close just because my parents hated each other. They had a terrible marriage. But
yeah.
I think what would it have been like to grow up with a family where you actually feel like a family unit?
And you feel that love
and
that
I think because you
love.
didn't have that, that's why you're so hell-bent on having it now.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, I didn't have this, and I have the power to change that and to have it for myself now and to be that husband and to be that father and to make sure that my family feels like a family rather than just people living in the same house.
Yeah, roommates.
Right.
Just a bunch of roommates in a house.
Roommates who hate each other.
Yeah, they can't stand each other and they're fighting and screaming all the time.
Right?
Like I don't want that.
Yeah.
For my kids, for myself, for my wife, I don't want any of that. So I just think that, when you talk about adversity and thinking like, man, I wish I would have had a family that was close. And I think about that a lot. That I wish I had it, but I'm glad I didn't. Because who knows how I would have turned out.
Right.
Because I'm really happy with the way my life is turning out.
Yeah.
And I'm really, I love the fact that when I know that I'm going against somebody or competing against somebody, I'm willing to go to places that they're not.
Right.
Because I've been there already. I've already put myself in, I didn't put myself there, but I've already lived through those
right.
the darkest kinds of depression and anxiety attacks and stuff like that you can imagine. So you're not going to take me I'll drag you to the deep end. You're not going to take me there. Like I live there,
But think about, like we were saying, all the stuff you learned from that and now you're sharing it with other people, right? The stuff you learned from football, the stuff you learned from your home life growing up and hunting, all of that stuff. Like, do you feel like it's kind of all come together?
Yeah. It's all coming full
right?
circle for me. Like it all works with each other.
Yeah.
You can apply everything that I was going through at home. I could apply that to the field. Right. If I can get through that, I can get through this. Right. And then I would take things I learned from the field and apply that to my everyday life. If I can handle that kind of adversity and handle that kind of heat and that kind of pressure and that kind of the expectations in the NFL and the cutthroat business that it is, if I can handle that, I can handle any industry.
Right.
It doesn't matter what it is. Like I can handle it. Like they're not going to hurt my feelings. It's
right.
like if somebody turns me down, the next, I just got to keep, okay, what did I do wrong? Now I'll go back and fix it.
Fix it and come through.
And come back
and
I'll be back again. If I'm anything, I'm persistent.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to keep trying, and I'll just keep trying to different directions until it works out. Because that's, if you really love something and you want to do it, you need to want that more than you want to take that next breath.
Right.
Like it's like, and I'm sure you can imagine what that feels like being on a mountain.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you got to want to get that, you want to get those next couple steps in more than you want to breathe.
Right.
More than
because it's going to hurt.
Because it's going to suck.
It's going to hurt.
So you just have to embrace that suck.
Right.
And push through it and keep going. Too many people are first of all, they start off in the wrong mentality, or they're afraid to fail. Like they are afraid of it. I welcome it.
Yeah, same.
Bring it on, because even with this podcast, I had a lot of anxiety thinking about, man, like what if people don't want to listen to it?
What?
What if people don't like me? What if people don't like what? Because I don't know. I'm like brash. I'm very like harsh and brass, and like I speak my mind and I keep it real. And sometimes people don't like that, So I'm like, what if people don't want to listen to me? But I was like, you know what? I was like, oh, if I don't try to do it, then I'm going to always regret it. And like I said before, I don't want to feel that.
But
I don't
I
want to
think
pay that
that's why
price of
people
regret.
listen, because you do keep it real, and you do, like, no, you don't sugarcoat things, and you say exactly what's on your mind. And I think that's why people listen.
Well, thank you.
I'm guessing.
Thank you. And I also try to be vulnerable and show vulnerability so that people can relate. Because as an athlete, I noticed that people have a hard time relating to a professional athlete.
Yeah.
But what they can relate to is somebody that came from a tough background and somebody who still battles that trauma. I'm careful with the word trauma because it's all perspective for people.
Right.
But there was, like, my childhood was very traumatic, and I still have to deal with that stuff now.
And then people see you now and they're like, wait, if he can get through it, they're probably young kids, wait.
Exactly.
If he can get through that, I can get through it.
Yeah, and that's the goal, right? If you can get these kids to, and I'm sure it's the same for you, if you can inspire someone, like, because your story is incredibly inspiring.
Oh, thank you.
Like, I mean, just anybody that that climbs mountains is inspiring because it is not easy, it's a mental game. So, like, that's life. Life is a game of it's a mental chess game.
But I felt like when I first started climbing, I kind of did, like, it does kind of go back to your childhood stuff. And I was like, I grew up in this house where I felt like nobody cared and nobody was going to nurture me, and nobody, again, no whining, no crying, no complaining. If I cried because, like, I broke my finger, it was like, go to your room, shut the door, you're grounded, because I was making noise. And I was like, but my finger is broken.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got to the mountains, it was the same thing. Like, no one's going to take care of me. No one's looking out for me. I've got to look out for myself. I got to be able to take care of myself. I got to be able to face scary shit and keep going. But when you talk about vulnerability, that's so important too, because one of my most memorable climbs was a climb in Russia, in the Caucasus, this mountain called Mount Elbrus. It's one of the 7 summits. And I was fortunate enough to be climbing with a legend named Vern Tejas, who did the first winter solo of Denali. Like, he is one tough bastard. Yeah, Vern Tejas. Winter solo of Denali.
Can you pull him up, Lane? I want to see this guy.
Tejas, he's amazing. So I'm climbing Mount Elbrus with Vern, and I'm feeling it. Like, my quads are killing me. I'm feeling the altitude. I feel like shit. And we stop for a rest break, and Vern goes, how's everybody feeling? And I, like every other guy, these big dudes, they're like, oh, feeling good, feeling great. Yeah, let's get this done. And I'm feeling terrible, like headache, feeling like I'm going to puke, quads screaming. And everyone's going, oh, we feel great. And I'm thinking, what's wrong with me? Am I going to be able to do this because nobody else is suffering except for me? Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I shouldn't be here. So everyone's like, feeling good. I'm like, yeah, feeling good. And then Vern goes, oh, okay, I guess it's only me who feels like puking. He's like, because my quads are screaming. He's like, I'm in so much pain right now. And I was like, oh my God. When he said that, it made me feel like, okay, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm supposed to feel shot right now. I'm supposed to feel like I'm running on empty. I'm supposed to feel like my quads are going to fall off. So the fact that he said that made me feel like I could do it, made me feel like there was nothing wrong with me. Yeah, that's Vern.
The mountaineering stuff is just incredible to me.
He's such a good
Sorry,
guy.
you said that, and I'm just thinking about, like, situations where, where showing vulnerability is like, it's a good leader can do that. A good leader can show his vulnerability to his peers and make himself relatable, right? Because at that, when you look up to someone, right? Like, when you have, like, in a locker room, there's older guys that are, like, accomplished, have Pro Bowls and have won Super Bowls and have all pros and all this stuff, and they have made these big contracts. And when you see them be vulnerable and, be like, hey man, like, I'm struggling today.
Yeah.
And then but they go out and do it anyways. That's
Right.
where you're like,
Right.
man, like, I can really grow here in this situation. Like, cause I felt like I wanted to quit and that I didn't belong, and I pushed through it because, I'm sure in that moment, everybody's saying, I feel great. I feel good, and you're just like,
I'm like, uh-oh.
oh no. Like
I literally thought I'm probably not going to make it to the top of this mountain because I'm struggling.
That's the mental game, right? That's where it's like, you almost have to fake it till you make it.
Right.
It's like, I'm just going to fake that I feel good. I'm just going to convince myself. And, with all the things you have to do in football, I had a coach tell me, you you get paid to practice. The game is for fun, because that's all we do is practice.
Yes.
We're constantly practicing, banging at practice every day, and that's what you're getting paid to do. You're supposed to have fun when you get to the game. You have to put all this work in so you can get to the game. So you think about all of the things that I had to go through that just like, I think back to college or even in high school running gassers, gassers is just like from one side of the field to the other, back. So you're doing it up, back. And it's like timed. So you're like racing against the time and you're doing that over and over and over in the summer heat. And back then they're like, water makes you weak, So
Yeah. Like,
guys are like falling out and
whips.
cramping and falling over and stuff. So it's like, I think about, in those moments, like, man, sometimes I would feel like I am dying right now. Like I feel like I'm going to die. I feel like my body's just going to shut down and I'm going to fall over and die. Like the heat is just beating on me. Like I could see the rays of heat coming off of the turf as I'm running. But when I got to college, like in high school, I'd be like, man, I was just bigger and stronger and faster than everybody. So it was easy, but then when I got to college and the competition was heavier and my teammates were better and everything. So then I realized that like, okay, if I just convince myself to like the shitty things and enjoy the process, this is going to be a lot easier.
Yeah.
And I would just like, I would be like, man, this is going to suck, but I'm going to embrace it. And I did. And I embraced that shitty, hard mental grind, physical grind. I embraced it and it all just kind of worked out. Right. And I ended up coming out on top. I ended up winning and I ended up, by the end of the summer, after summer training and stuff, I was in like crazy condition because I had just like kept going. When other guys would be like, oh, my hamstring or, oh, they'd make up, something was tight and they would just be like, kind of find an excuse. Right. So I would just ignore all of those because your mind does it. Like, you're crazy. People are crazy if they think that like people that get to a high level of whatever it is they're doing, if they don't have those moments of doubt and wanting to quit in those moments. Like I can't tell how many times I want to be like, man, I just want to lay down. I'm just going to quit. Like, and then I don't.
That's how people die in the mountains too, is because it hurts with every step you're taking, you feel pain. And when you just stop and sit down, you're like, oh, this feels so good. And there's a lot of people that stop and sit down and don't get up again.
They can't get up. You just have to keep moving. It's fun. That's at a whole different level than what I'm doing. But when we're packing animals out, like when you're packing an elk out and you got 150 pounds on your back and you got to take it 4 miles and it's September, so it's still hot, in the middle of the day, the sun's beating on you. You're just like, you see guys in your group, you're packing out with 3 or 4 other guys. You'll see guys stop and you're like, don't stop, dude.
Yeah, you got to keep going.
You have to keep going because the second you stop,
it's harder to
the
get
lactic
going
acid
again.
builds up, right? And I was like that when I would do like conditioning for football. I would do my sprint or whatever I had to do, and then I would keep moving before the next one because the second I stopped, that lactic acid would build up, and then I felt like I had concrete in my legs. So I just kept moving and controlled my breathing, and then I would be ready to go for the next one. So like if you can if I could just do one more, right? If I could, all right, then you do that one, and you're like exhausted when you get back. Well, if you just like control your breath and focus on like walking and just walk and breathe.
Yes.
You'll be ready to go by the next one. And then eventually it gets to the point where it's like, I can do this literally all day. So we could just keep going all day if you want. You know what I mean? You're not going to break me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I take the approach in life, right? It's like everything I do, I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah. That's it. That's why I say you don't have to be the fastest and the strongest. You just have to be the most relentless. You have to be the person that will put one foot in front of the other and you'll keep going when other people feel like quitting. You just be that relentless person. The other thing is that, I mean, it's like this in football, in business, in life, everywhere. Everybody has different skill sets and everyone has different areas where they can contribute. And I realize because of my size, I'm probably never going to be the fastest and the strongest, but I can be the person who always has a good attitude, who's always trying to cheer people up, the person who won't quit, right? The person that says we can keep going, and be, find my role within a team.
Yeah.
And I used to get really discouraged because of my size when I would see these tall guys blowing by me on the trail. Oh, I don't know if I'm made for this because of my physical size, and then realizing I don't have to be like them. And I really think about my South Pole expedition, which was about 2 months. We were crossing Antarctica on skis, 600 miles on skis. We're each hauling a 150-pound sled harnessed to our waist. So all our gear, supplies, food, everything. And it was my first long ski expedition like that. I'd skied to the North Pole, but it was a shorter expedition, so we didn't have to carry as much stuff. So this was a heavy sled. And I thought, okay, I've climbed all these mountains. I'm pretty strong in the mountains. I'll be fine here because we're skiing to the South Pole. South Pole's at about 10,000 feet. So I'm like, it's not even that much elevation. Be fine.
10,000 feet is up there.
Especially,
I know when I go to 10,000 feet, I'm like,
and of course, Antarctica is, coldest. It's the coldest, windiest place on Earth, right?
and what's the temperature up there?
We went in summer when it was
down there,
a
sorry.
balmy -50.
Oh.
So,
What kind of gear are you wearing?
so you're wearing Gore-Tex stuff when you're skiing. You have a fur ruff around your hood because it acts as a little microclimate, and it attracts all the frost. So it doesn't not as much frost gets on your face. It keeps your face warmer. It's made of wolf and wolverine, 2 different kinds of fur. And so I thought, well,
Is it this
yeah, I'm going to be fine on this trip because I've been to the mountains. This isn't much altitude. I'll be fine. And I trained as hard as I could possibly train because that's just who I am, right? I'm going to train hard. I'm going to be that person. I want to be the clutch player. I want to be the MVP on every team that I'm on. At the end of the trip, I want people to say, I'm really glad she was on our team. So of course I'm going to train.
Being a good teammate is like the best compliment you can receive.
Right.
Yeah.
So trained, I thought nobody's trained harder than I have trained for this trip. So we hit the ice, start skiing. You're skiing 12, 15 hours a day, hauling this sled that's attached to your waist. And first couple days, I'm way behind my teammates. And I'm thinking, okay, just going to take a few days for me to, get in the swing of things. But after a week, I didn't get any faster. I didn't get any better. And I could not keep up with my teammates, many of whom were 6'4", 230 pounds. So a foot taller than me, twice my weight. Because you know what trumps training and willpower and dedication is just the law of physics.
Yeah.
Right? So the law of physics dictates that somebody who's 6'4", 230 pounds can drag a 150-pound sled a lot more quickly and a lot more efficiently than someone who's 5'4", 110 pounds.
Yeah.
Couldn't keep up.
Well, and if people that are listening, cross country skiing is like the most cardiovascular,
it's hard,
taxing thing you can do, right? My wife did it a lot growing up, and she says that it was like she's like got this crazy endurance in her now just from constantly doing that with her dad. So I just think I'd always have a lot of respect for that because it's so difficult, and it's something I don't even have any kind of like. I look at it, I'm like, I don't know if I could do it. I don't know.
It was well. I'm thinking, okay, I bet these people hate me because I'm slowing the team down. Because if they have to slow down their pace to accommodate me, they're going to get cold. The only way to stay warm out there is when you're moving, and these guys have to stop and wait for me because there's crevasse danger along the route, so they couldn't just leave me. And so they're having to stop and wait all the time. And I know they're hypothermic waiting for me. I'm feeling like shit. Oh my God, I'm the worst person on this team. I bet they regret bringing me onto this team. I'm just beating myself up psychologically. I'm already beat up physically. And like 5-6 days in the trip, I overhear Eric Phillips, our team leader, this guy from Australia, amazing, one of the best leaders I've ever met. I overhear him talking to my Canadian teammate, George, and he's like, oh, poor Alison. I feel so bad for her. She's trying so hard, but she's just so much smaller than everybody. And George said, I know, I feel bad for her too. There's no way, like with her size, that she's going to be able to keep up. And Eric said, you know what? I think we should help her out. I think we should take some weight out of her sled. And George said, great idea. I'm in. Like, I'll do it. And the next day, they took weight out of my sled, made their own sleds heavier, but it was the way they did it that really blew my mind because instead of saying like, hey, you suck, we'll take weight out of your sled and make our sleds heavier so you can keep up, Eric said, hey guys, before we start skiing today, I want to weigh everybody's sleds. I want to make sure they're all about even, make sure we're all carrying the same amount of weight. George helped me out, and they each start picking up everybody's sleds, weighing them, acting like they're trying to see how much weight's in them. They get to my sled and they pick it up and they act like they can't lift it. Like they get it, 3 inches off the ground, and then they both drop it and they start clutching their backs. Oh my God, what the hell is in this sled? There's Eric. Yeah, this is crazy. You have the heaviest sled of any person on this team. What is going on? We need to make this a little more fair. And Eric's like, George, grab her food bag. I'll take her fuel canisters. They start offloading weight from my sled, and they're making their sleds heavier. They're making their job harder to help me out.
Yeah.
And they could have said...
Well, in relation, I mean, that's like them carrying a 250-pound sled.
Yeah. And...
It's because if they're 200 to 230 pounds, 150-pound sled really isn't that much for them.
But for me,
but for you, it's
more.
way. It's like carrying your own body around, but more.
Yeah. So I knew what they were doing because I overheard them talking, and it just meant so much to me. Because not only did they take weight out of my sled, but they took a psychic load off my shoulders without saying a word.
And they did it in a way.
Let me keep my pride.
So
intact.
let you keep your pride. Yeah. Which you shouldn't, no pride should be lost there because you're already pound for pound doing more than them.
But so I'm thinking, what am I going to do to pay these guys back? Right? These guys who are sacrificing for me. Well, what I realized was at the end of the day, these tall guys, so at the end of the day, you're skiing, you're exhausted, you pitch your tent, you have to build a snow barricade around your tent to protect it from the elements. And so it's a lot of work, and it's back-breaking work. You're already exhausted. Now you got to build the barricade. You got to dig up all the snow and ice and make the bricks. And I noticed these tall guys trying to shovel snow. We had a pretty short snow shovel. These tall guys are wrenching their backs trying to shovel snow. Well, at 5'4", I'm closer to the ground. I can shovel snow easily without screwing up my back. So that next night after they took the weight out of my sled, I said, hey, you guys, can I shovel this? Give me the shovel. I'll shovel the snow around your tent. And Eric said, wait, sorry, what? I said, yeah, give me the shovel. I'll make the snow barricade for you. And he said, I'm sorry, why do you want to do that? And I said, well, I just love to shovel snow. And he said, you love to shovel snow? And I said, yes, because I grew up in Phoenix and I never got to do that. So it's a treat for me, like to be able to shovel snow. I just love doing it because I never got to do it as a kid. So as often as I could, grab that shovel, dug into the snow, built the snow barricade around their tent to protect their tent. And as a shorter person, that was a way I could contribute. And it really was a great lesson for me in learning that there's some people that there's some people that have weaknesses they will never overcome. Mm-hmm. My physical size, never going to overcome that. But you can compensate. You can't always overcome, but you can always compensate for that weakness. And everybody has an area where they can add value. Everybody has an area on a team where they can shine, right? But if we're so focused on comparing ourselves to other people in areas where they're strong, we may never uncover the area where we can add the most value. And I spent 4 years on the part-time faculty at West Point in the Department of Behavioral Sciences and Leadership, where I would lecture to cadets. And of course, the cadets, they come out of the U.S. Military Academy, they're platoon leaders, they're second lieutenants, they have a big job to do right out of school. And when I share this story at West Point, I always have young female cadets come up to me with tears in their eyes, hugging me, saying, this story has helped me so much because I'm nervous about when I graduate. I'm a platoon leader, and they're my size or smaller, and I've got these guys who are 6'4", 230 pounds, and what am I going to do? Because I know I'm not going to be as physically strong. I got to carry a heavy ruck. I can't do it the same way these tall guys do it. I'm not going to ever be physically as strong as they are, and it gives them hope that as leaders, right, you learn how, because you don't get to choose who's in your platoon.
Right.
You have to figure out how to lead these very diverse teams where everybody has very different skill sets. And as leaders, they know it's their job to help everybody find the area where they can shine. Because if you help someone find an area where they feel like they're adding value, that's what builds their self-confidence and their trust and loyalty toward a leader. So you have to make people feel valued. And if you just tell them they're shitty and they suck and they're not as good as everybody else, when I promise you, they already know that. Like they already
feel that way.
I already knew I wasn't as good as everybody else. I didn't need someone to tell me that. I already knew that. But if you can help people feel like they're a valuable member of the team, that's when you'll get the most productivity
You're
out
going to
of
get the
them.
most work out of them.
Yeah.
I think that's good advice for any business,
Yeah.
any company that is, looking to get the most out of their people that work for them. I think you need to just take a step back, and that old school way of just like, hey, you suck. Like the next guy will do better. The next guy will do better. Like how about you encourage me a little bit and teach me a different way, or help me learn a different way.
I used to be the person that when I had weak people on my team would just wish them away, whether it was on an expedition or in business. If I had somebody that wasn't performing, I think I wish that person would just go away, quit, leave the expedition, get transferred to another division, if it was a work thing, have something heavy fall on them. And I would think if they're not performing well, it's because they're not trying. They are not focused. They are not dedicated. They are not disciplined. They have no desire. They are lazy. No, sometimes it's just not their skill set.
Yeah. Sometimes they're just not good at it.
And I think,
and it was, I dealt with this in football a lot. You'd see guys that just struggled doing things like, sometimes like we taking on double teams, right? So a double team is where you line up and two big 350-pound dudes are going to try to move you. And there was guys that just weren't good at it. And it's a lot of technique, a lot of strength and power comes into that, but a lot of it's technique. And they just didn't understand the techniques. They were just trying to muscle through it, and they're just getting taken on skates back to the, 5-6 yards back and dumped on their back. And when I was younger, I'd be like, man, you just are not, you're just weak. Like you need to get in the weight room. Like instead of teaching them how I do it, which is like a technique thing, like I attack one guy and minimize my surface area on the other side and fight into that pressure. You fight the pressure, and you'll be good. Instead of just like trying to take two guys on at once, like focus on something like a small target and then fight back into that. As I got older, I started teaching that. But when I was younger, I'd be like, well, we're not going to see him around, long. He's not going to be around long. That's just, next guy in type of mentality. And that's that's the football mentality, honestly, is, the next guy will if you can't do it, somebody else will.
Well, it's funny because I wrote a book in 2014 called On the Edge, and I have a whole chapter about Eric Phillips and what happened on this Antarctic expedition. And so after the book came out, I sent him this email and I said, hey, what's your address in Australia? I need to send you a copy of my book because I have a chapter about you, and it seems to be everybody's favorite chapter. And he sent this response back. And I keep this email, it's in my purse right now, but I keep it with me all the time. And he responded and he said, hey, thanks for your email, blah, blah, blah. Great to hear from you. He said, I already bought a copy of your book. He said, I just did what I hope every good leader would do. He said, people are people. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and solutions need to be found, to keep the team going. But what really struck me about this email is he said, don't underestimate your contributions. He said, because I wrote him this email, I said, this chapter about you, I said, where you helped me take the weight out of my sled instead of making me feel like shit for being the worst person on the team. Like people really admire the way you handle this. And when he responded, he said, don't underestimate your contributions. He said, there were days when you were stronger than all of us. He said, your humor and your enthusiasm, he said, your attitude, your humor, and your enthusiasm were unwavering, and we needed that. And it made me realize, having a positive attitude and a good sense of humor when the shit hits the fan can go a long way in situations where things feel bleak.
He probably wouldn't have suggested to help you had you been an asshole.
Right.
And whining and complaining and weren't positive about what was going on. And that's the thing, man. If you're not a positive in those moments and try to stay positive, sometimes it's fun to just like bitch about the misery, right? Like let's laugh at the misery and goof about it. But to me, that's like a positive thing because you're just making light of it and you're making it good. Kind of like what you said on the mountain when, what was his name? Sorry, the guy on the mountain.
Vern Tejas?
Yes, Vern, when he was like, my quads are wrecked right now.
Yeah.
I would, we'd be running and guys would just, nobody would be saying anything. Everybody looked tired. And I'd be like, man, this sucks,
Yeah.
And, and then I'd say things like, this shit ain't for everybody, but it's for me though. And I would line up and go again. And that would make people laugh and it would make people, get to the next one. Right. And just try to keep it light and try to be funny, try to stay positive. I think that is like there's no physical attribute that can compare to that.
When we had a hard day, I would take my journal, I'd rip pages out of my journal and I'd write stupid jokes and put them in people's sleeping bags. So like when they laid down, there was a piece of paper and they could open it and be like, where do cantaloupes go for the summer? To John Cougar's melon camp. Just stupid, like really stupid jokes, but they would make people laugh on the expedition. And it's true, our brains contain these specialized cells called mirror neurons that actually mirror the like affective emotions of the people around us. So when you're positive and enthusiastic, that, they talk about enthusiasm is contagious. It's a real scientific thing where people around you will feel more positive and enthusiastic. And so that really is a strength. If you can be the person to keep people's spirits up when they feel like there's little hope, that can really go a long way in propelling a team forward.
Oh yeah. I struggle with that sometimes too, because I usually, sorry, but growing up, I expected the worst to happen. You just become conditioned to the worst possible scenario to come out. So my wife sometimes will be like, I need you to be more positive. Like she'll just say it. Like, I need you to be more positive. Like you are literally just looking at all the bad things that can happen here. And I'm like, I know, because I feel like I'm unprepared if I don't acknowledge it. Like if I don't acknowledge that it's possible, like the failure side of it is possible, then I don't want to be surprised when it happens, because like I said, I fail a lot more than I succeed. But at the same time, maybe I would like minimize those failures if I was just a little more positive in that situation. Maybe I would actually even learn more from it than just like focusing on the negative. So I try to take that approach now.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a pretty good balance between embracing the failure, learning from it, accepting it, and being like, "Oh my God, I'm done. This is hard," and then like learning how to spin that into something positive, right? Because if you also don't want to be like too goody two shoes. Oh, wow, this is great. You want to be like, this freaking sucks. Like but you know what? This is what we signed up for, and we're going to do this.
Yeah.
We're going to embrace the suck and turn it into something good.
Yeah. All right. So all right. So you've climbed these mountains, right? You did all that. You accomplished the things that you really wanted to accomplish in life. What is next? What age did you stop climbing?
So I still, now that I'm living out here in Colorado, I've been out here about 2 years. We moved out here from Northern California. We don't really miss that. We love Colorado so much. We love it. So it's fun to be able to still get out to all these mountains on the weekend. It doesn't have to be a 14er. I feel like the 14ers in Colorado are always so crowded.
Oh, yeah.
So I have this friend of mine, Erica May, who's an amazing climber who I go out with a lot. And Colorado Mountain Club, I'll climb with them sometimes. But it's been a few years since I've been to a big peak. But I still like to go. I still would go to big mountains. I just don't feel like it needs to be something that's going to kill me.
Right.
Because, I have to have my dog rescue in the future.
Well, that's your passion now.
Yeah, that's my passion. Right. And then for me, my new, and I'm scared, I'm going to say this on your podcast, so now I'm going to have to do it because I'm saying it out loud. But I've had this dream for a couple of years I want to write a one-woman show and perform a one-woman show like in theaters about my lessons, because right now I work full-time as a keynote speaker, and it's very much business lessons from extreme environments. But there's so many funny lessons I have that wouldn't be appropriate for a business audience, but would be funny for a regular audience, or would be useful for a regular audience. Just stuff about childhood and just other
maybe
jokes
maybe a podcast.
Well,
because that's something you can do at home.
I know, but I feel like there's already so many great podcasts out there that I don't know. But I just feel like I want to start maybe in theaters and local theaters in Colorado, because there's all these little towns in Colorado that have theaters, and I want to. I already have an hour-long keynote speech. If I could turn that into 75 minutes or 90 minutes on stage and include some of the humor that's way too edgy for corporate.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to do, because I want to be able to share these lessons with more people, and also include the stuff that is where the humor is too edgy or too unpolitically correct. Not politically correct.
Yeah, because how sensitive people are these days.
Yeah.
What is this dog rescue going to be called?
Oh, I think I might have to name it something after Trooper. So Trooper was our dog that we lost about a year and a half ago, our 13-year-old lab. He was my soulmate. That's Trooper. my soulmate dog. Oh my God, he was the best. And it was so hard to say goodbye to him. We had a vet come to house, and Pat, my husband, Trooper was his dog when we met. I never had a dog before. Trooper was my first dog. And so this was my first time saying goodbye to a dog. And Pat's like a tough guy, right? He was in the Army. He was a tanker in the Army, and he was in the FBI. And he said when the vet came to the house, like I laid down next to Trooper, just like spooning him. I had my hand on his heart. And Pat said, I can't watch this. Like I can't be in the room. So he's like 2 rooms over, and I'm talking to the vet. And so I have my hand on his heart. And she gave him the shot, because I could feel his heart slowing down and then stop. And I'm bawling. And I didn't think he could hear anything, but the vet who did the procedure said, she looks at me and very softly said, would you like me to cut some of his fur to give to you as a keepsake? And as I'm saying yes, I hear Pat 2 rooms down go, no, look around this house. There's fucking dog hair everywhere. We don't need any more dog hair.
Oh, that's...
But anyway,
I know how that is because I had a black lab too, so the hair is everywhere.
My little patriot dog Trooper, but yeah, kind of long mane. So I think I would. That's Tanker down on the far right with that. That's Tanker. I brushed him, and so much hair came off of him. He thought he had like a new little brother, and he refused to leave its side. He like sat there with that pile of hair all day. But I think I would want to name the dog rescue after Trooper, something after Trooper, because I love Tanker, but Trooper was. I felt like our souls were truly connected. And I remember Pat, said Pat had dogs his whole life, and Trooper was his hunting dog too. He used to hunt with him all the time. And he said, I've had dogs my whole life. Troop was a once in a lifetime dog. And when when it was time to carry, the vet had to take him down to the car, and she said, I'll be right back. I'm going to get a stretcher if I could get some help. Cause he was like 108 pounds. And Pat's like, nope, my dog's not going out on anybody's stretcher. He's like, he's my dog. I'm carrying him. He just like scooped him up, like carried him down. But I'm like, But I feel like he was such a special dog. I really want to name rescue after him.
That would be cool. That'd be a great way to kind of let his legacy live on,
yeah. We have a whole shrine in that's Trooper on 4th of July. We were at a barbecue and he was overheating, and God forbid my dog should be uncomfortable. So I'm like, I need some water. Like I need to put him in a tub of water and cool him down. But he was so spoiled. But I just feel like, he was that once in a lifetime dog.
Yeah.
And when he was older, he died. He passed away at 13, about 108 pounds, not overweight at all, just a big lab. People thought he was mixed with Great Dane or something, but I just learned, you really learn that unconditional love and that dog love. It's so deep.
That dog love is different. It's different for sure. It's special.
Yeah. So we have a shrine for Trooper. We have pictures of him. People had posters of him made. They took pictures off social media and had posters made and sent them to us, and memorial stones and things and shot glasses. Like we have a whole shrine to Trooper in our house. Now
you can create an entire kennel.
Yeah.
And in his memory,
But I want older labs and Goldens. Like you read about a dog in a shelter. Oh, 13-year-old Rover, one owner his whole life, owner passed away, looking for a home. Like those are the dogs I want to take.
Yeah. And those dogs are the ones that need love.
Yeah.
Because they're used to being loved, and then their owner's gone, and now they're just like, they don't feel any purpose now.
Yeah. And they'll that's sleep in the bed with us.
Yeah, and that's the most important part for a dog, I think, is they just want to feel like their purpose is to.
But they bring me joy. Yeah. Being around dogs brings me joy. And I just feel like at this point in my life, if it's not bringing me joy or money, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Like it has to bring one of the two.
Yeah. Yep.
In order for me to say
I'm right
yes.
there with you.
And money alone, you want to feel good about what you're doing. But if someone comes to me with a project that like I'm fairly excited about, but it's not my dream project, but it's going to be lucrative, I'll do it. But if something doesn't bring any money but brings me pure joy, I'm all over that too. Yeah. But if someone comes to me with a proposal for something that brings me neither joy nor money, it's not happening.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
No.
I won't do it. I don't care what it is. No. I don't care about the exposure or any of that. If I don't like doing it, I'm not going to do it. And I dealt with that with the radio show. I just didn't enjoy sitting in a room for 4 hours and talking about sports.
Really?
Every day.
Now you can talk about sports when you want to, in the fashion that you want to, with who you want to.
Yeah, and how I want to say it, and say what I want to say. that was the other, I don't like being controlled, told what I can and can't say.
Yeah.
So that's the FCC controls a lot of that. So
Yeah.
I didn't love it. So I was like, if I'm not passionate about this and I'm already kind of focused on other passions, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to the team.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm just
And
gonna
I
kind of
wouldn't
remove
want
myself.
someone doing something with me or for me or in business with me that wasn't super passionate and excited about it.
Yeah, me too. I'm the same way.
Life's too short.
Well, it was awesome getting to talk to you.
This was so much fun.
I
Thank you for
really
having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was awesome. Like your stories are just incredible. I feel like we could
thanks.
go for, a whole 3-4 hours talking about this stuff. But unfortunately, I try to keep this at like an hour to an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Because I think it's hard to listen to a podcast that's any longer than that.
I know. Although I do listen to Joe Rogan. For 3
Yeah, well,
hours.
well, that's the only one that you'll, all the other ones, it's like after about an hour
And
hour
some
and a
of
half,
them
you're
after 10 minutes, I'm like, oh, maybe you don't need to have a podcast.
Yeah, some people are not great at interviewing, and this is not like when I say interview, this is meant to be two people having a conversation and relating on things that they can relate on. Honestly, it's just like, I can relate to the struggles and the adversity that you had to face as a child, and how that catapulted you into what you almost like embrace that adversity.
Yeah.
And there's like a dopamine dump that you get every time you push through that adversity and come out on top. So I know what that feels like, and I continue to do that to myself today. As soon as we're done recording, I'm going to go straight to the gym, and I'm going to do a workout that's going to suck. It's going to suck. But I'm like, after I'm done with it, I feel great because I know that I pushed a little harder than I was comfortable doing.
And people hear you talking about it, and they know they can do it too.
Exactly. And the same with you. Like, you can motivate so many people, and you're such a good, in a world today where we have so many terrible examples of how to, be a strong woman and what that looks like.
And it's all about victimhood.
Yeah,
Right?
it's all about being a victim. You are like the opposite of that. And,
thanks.
and I'm super proud to know you. And
I'm proud to know you too.
yeah, so I really appreciate it. I'm
thanks.
glad that my girls, because I'm a girl dad. I'm glad my girls have women like you. And
I hope I get to
women
meet
like
them. I want to meet them soon.
You will. Roxy's in school, and then Tatum's with her dad. So, it's nobody's here right now, and it's kind of nice being able to record without anybody here, because usually we're hearing little footsteps up there running around. She's trying to be quiet, but she can't help it. But I would love for you to meet them, and we will. We'll go.
love it too.
Maybe hit the slopes this winter.
Yeah,
that'd be fun. So that's a wrap.